My name is Patty Kenner, and tonight it is my great honor to introduce my dear friend, Ambassador Stuart Eizenstat. Stu's life has been dedicated to public service, serving as Chief Domestic Policy Advisor under President Jimmy Carter and U.S. Ambassador to the European Union under President Bill Clinton. In 2013, he was appointed Special Advisor for Holocaust issues under President Barack Obama, a position he holds to this day under President Joe Biden. And we at Selfhelp see the fruits of his labor every day in the lives of our precious survivors. Please join me in honoring Ambassador Stuart Eizenstat with the Elie Wiesel Humanitarian Award in recognition of his extraordinary advocacy work on behalf of Holocaust survivors worldwide.
Eizenstat was as good as anybody I've ever worked with at just getting the job done.
Well, Stu was kind of a repository of intelligence and, I'd say, political courage. He was not afraid to tackle a difficult issue, even though it might be controversial.
I thought he was the smartest man I'd ever known because it didn't matter what issue came up. He knew everything about it.
He is always prepared, never self-serving, but maybe most of all, he can be completely trusted.
Stu Eizenstat is a fundamentally decent person with extraordinarily high standards for himself and therefore for others.
I grew up in a very Jewish household, one in which the Holocaust was never mentioned. In 1968, when I had served a year in the Johnson White House, I met Arthur Morse, who had just published a path-breaking book called While 6 Million Died. And it disclosed, to my utter shock, how much President Roosevelt and his staff knew and what might have been done to save Jews. And I literally said to myself, if I'm ever in a senior position in the U.S. government, I want to do something to remove this cloud from the history of the United States, which had done so much to win the war, but so little to save the Jews of Europe.
In the late 1970s, Stuart Eizenstat was working in the Carter administration and was one of the initiators of what led to the Holocaust Memorial Museum in Washington, D.C.
The president asked me who should chair the commission, and I said, Mr. President, there's only one person who can do it. It's Elie Wiesel. He's the face, the voice, the spirit of Holocaust survivors. Having awards from Elie Wiesel means everything to me. No one can step into Elie's shoes. He's unique, but it's feeling that somehow I'm showing him how he inspired me to do the things I've tried to do to make life better for other survivors.
And I would say that that was one of the things that Stu helped to originate that has had the most lasting and beneficial effect in our country.
During the Clinton administration, I was ambassador to the European Union. I was reading the Wall Street Journal, and there was a front-page article about dormant Swiss bank accounts that had been created by Jews trying to keep their money away from Hitler's grasp and never returned. And I met with the Swiss Bankers Association, and I said, is it true? That led to class action suits being filed against the Swiss banks, and the final settlement was $1.25 billion. And then it was like peeling back the layers of an onion. The Holocaust was not just the greatest genocide, it was the greatest theft in history. And it had basically been forgotten for 50 years. And I was able to help bring this back on the world agenda. And now I think I've negotiated more hours, more days, more weeks, and more years with German government officials than any living person. In total, I helped negotiate over $8 billion in recoveries.
The German companies have time and again denied any legal liability in U.S. courts.
He went to a raft of countries, identified responsibilities, and got people to pony up. And it was a truly astonishing diplomatic achievement.
Stu knows that there can never be reparations made for what happened. But he knows that it's important as a matter of history, as a matter of policy, and as a matter of the lives of the individuals who were alive and affected by it, that there be some some justice meted out.
He's been involved with every major agreement that has benefited Holocaust survivors for over 5 decades, negotiating for compensation for Holocaust survivors, for property restitution, the return of assets, home care. There are hundreds of thousands of Holocaust survivors around the world whose lives are unbelievably better because of the efforts of Stuart Eizenstat. They don't know his name, but they know the results of his work.
The world knows one half of my father as a world-class lawyer, public servant, negotiator. What most people don't know is that he is a better father and he's a better husband than he is a public servant. For him, family was at the center of life.
My dad was like any other dad. I mean, he loved to play sports with us. And despite his public sector service, which was all-encompassing, he was really always there for us. You know, he worked long hours, but we always had Friday night Shabbat dinner. He was always there.
He gave as selflessly to us of his time as he has to the country and society at large.
I have no doubt that if you had time and you went out and interviewed every younger person who worked closely with him, they would say the same thing. I looked at that and I said, yes, I can. I can be in public service and I can still have a good family.
My late wife, Fran, a wonderful wife of 45 years, was my partner in all of my Holocaust work. And when she prematurely passed away, we created at Selfhelp both an award in her name and a special project to give extra help to survivors. And connecting that to Fran, who was the love of my life, is amazingly moving.
I think it's extremely fitting, given her commitment to Holocaust memory, given her commitment to Holocaust survivors.
I can't think of any better way to remember my mom or her legacy and what she stood for than being so closely linked and associated with Selfhelp and the remarkable work the organization has done.
Selfhelp is a vitally important organization, and the work that they do to support Holocaust survivors and their families is irreplaceable.
In 2009, in his role at the State Department, Stu convened a conference of 49 governments to work on property restitution. At the end of the conference, there was a performance, something called Defiant Requiem. It was a multimedia presentation, music connected with a concentration camp. At one point during the performance, Stu looked over at Fran, and with tears running down her face, she said, "Stu, we have to bring this to the Kennedy Center."
And it was really Mom's passion. We are going to show people what a will to live looked like during the Holocaust, and they took it all over the world.
I felt very strongly that the last word for the Holocaust should not be money, it should be memory.
We all live through history. He's helped create and alter history.
The reason he's my hero is that he applies all of his gifts to service. It's been a service to the American people, it's been a service to the Jewish people, and especially for Holocaust survivors.
Stu has been what a superb public servant ought to be.
You can't define America by race, religion, creed. It's only can be defined in terms of what we believe. Stu gets that. Stu understands that.
In public life, there are no permanent victories or defeats. What is permanent is the quality of your service, the depth of your dedication, and the skill within which you can bring out the best in others. On those scores, he gets about as close to 100 as you could ever get.